So I'm basically posting a video of me fondling a stiff stick between my legs with a camera aimed at my crotch. That's when I knew I had finally done something with my life. On a more serious note, this is going to be a quick first look at the FF Beast, which is this thing here. And now you can actually see it. So, a couple of important caveats first. First of all, I'm still using a plastic VKP adapter here. So this is kind of a cosplay beast. I'm not really using it as it should. I'm not brave enough to put all that force through this plastic bit. I should be getting the metal adapter pretty soon, and then we'll see again, but this is still a cosplay beast. I haven't done full power. That said, I've done quite a lot of power. So one of the important parts of this video is me trying to figure out what that power actually means. Now the second caveat, there is no single beast. Again, this is the one made by GVL224. It's the 45 Newton meter version. Also note that this is kind of a weird setup. The beast excels with long stick extensions, and I'm basically sticking the stick straight to it, so yeah. But that said, yeah, I've had some time to play with it now, so I have some opinions and ideas already. And the important bit here is, when I had the Rhino, I loved it, everything else about it, but it doesn't really have all that much power. Now this thing does. And I've been testing it a little bit, and especially to see what does that power actually do for you. And I think it's best if I just show you. Now first of all, this is an amazing combination of power, precision and accuracy. It is actually brilliantly accurate, and really nice electronics inside there. So I've been actually loving flying this thing. And I'm super rusty in an Apache, but it's still really good with this. Okay, so now we are moving slightly. And the thing is, yeah, you can see, well, you can't see because I suck, but the precision and accuracy is right there. And this is so nice to float or hover. The control and the feel is just beautiful. It's brilliant, it's amazing. And this is not really yet the case for massive power, but in a way it actually is. As everybody knows, curves and force feedback in DCS don't get along very well. And I've never been using any curves, so especially when your stick is kind of light, you don't get a lot of force in the middle parts, and this is not very heavy in the middle either, of course, because it goes down to 0 in the middle. But it's already starting to have an effect, all this force. Because even I feel like the stick isn't actually even moving. It is, I know it's moving, but it's almost like a force sensing stick at this point. I'm actually giving it a reasonable amount of force just right in the middle. And obviously, well, this is not a generic force feedback video, but this is the impressive part of force feedback. It can do helicopters magnificently. Like, this is the most incredible thing about force feedback, essentially. Like, you just can't do this with any other kind of stick. So when I push down the trim button, I just get a lot of damping. And oh boy, do I get a lot of damping with this kind of power. And when I release, the stick stays right there. And that's the power. That's what it does. When I do the trimming, release the trim, it's rock fucking solid stick between my legs. It's completely awesome. Like, that's one case for the pure power of this thing. Like, this is hands-on like I've never had hands-on in this helicopter before. And now, when we are moving a little bit more, and still my movements are incredibly small on the stick. I suppose you can still see the stick moving, but like I said, this is pretty much like a force sensing stick right now. I'm giving it some force and maneuvering the helicopter. But the actual motion of the stick is absolutely minuscule, however I have pretty solid control over it. Because I am exerting some amount of force just to move it a couple of millimeters. And that's very different from my previous experiences. Now, every time I talk about a lot of force, keep in mind the Rhino is not weak. If you are not using a force feedback joystick right now, your stick is probably weaker than the Rhino. At least the ones I've tested, like the Winwing Libra, VKB, some version of it, the Gunfighter, and Virpil, what was it there, not the latest version, Mongoose something. All of those are weaker than the Rhino, so it's completely unfair to call that thing weak. It's just that this thing here is absurdly strong. And I know that Winwing are working on something that should be comparable, but well, we'll just have to see. But yeah, as far as the massive force goes, this is really a showcase for it. And the interesting thing here that I want to point out is that I'm really not doing anything with the stick. I just there, and it's right in the middle. Well, it's not in the middle, but it's in the trimmed state. And I have such solid, nice control over this helicopter because there is so much force already at this early stage. So I have solid feel for the stick, even though the movements are so small. And this is probably not what you think about when you think about a massively powerful force feedback device. But this is, to me, one of the strongest cases for all that force. And now, when we are talking about all that force, and keep in mind, I haven't tested this properly, I don't know how much force it actually can handle. But at the settings I have right now, the maximum force when I pull this all the way back is about 17 kilos. That's like 2.5 horny buffalo bulls for the imperialist people. And that's kind of a lot for a joystick, but when it comes to realistic aircraft controllers, it's right in the ballpark where it should be. And this is advertised as 45 Newton meter unit, and that 17 kilos is bang on for the 45 Newton meters at this, which is like 26 centimeters from this spot to the gimbal. It's like what 1/60th of a whale dig for you Imperials. So it's a lot of force, but it's not like explosively, massively incredible amount of force. It's still quite reasonable. But I wanted to start with this kind of little bit probably unexpected view at this question. I bet you were expecting some kind of a World War II dogfight where like pulling my wings off or stuff, but I think the first and most important use case for that, all that power, is right here, where I'm actually not using that much. Now if I were to pull hard, a lot of stuff would happen, and it would take a lot of force, of course, to do that. But it's quite rare that I would. Most of the time flying Apaches or anything else is frankly like this. I'm just enjoying the super solid centering, and this is the same with all kinds of trim, by the way. I've noticed that my trim in stuff like A10 or F18 or stuff like that is much more precise, because it's such a solid feel. You can feel the stick moving and really sticking to the new center point. And this is one of the best use cases for all that power that I've found so far. And I remind you again, this is still the plastic adapter, so I haven't done really lots of this stuff. Now, if I were to start maneuvering, there's a missile hunting after me. It is actually quite heavy. It's resisting me heavily, of course, unless I release the trim. And that's probably what you were expecting. And it's true, it's really nice, heavy and solid. But with actual planes in a simulator, I don't feel that all that force is hampering me in any way. It's just like it's kind of nice to have. Actually, when I was playing with this, just trying it out for the first time ever, trying out all the settings, giving it different kinds of resistance and so on, I kind of arrived at something I felt was kind of nice. And when I measured it, it was 15 kilos. So the powerful feel is actually nice, at least for me. And I'm going to show you another use case that showcases the power a lot more than this here, but I think this is the most important thing tonight, because you might not have been expecting this. I kind of wasn't. I've always been a lot of power kind of guy because I have all these He-Man muscles, but I kind of wasn't expecting just how great all that power would be when I'm not really using it. So, combined with all the precision, accuracy, that power really means something. And I've been having a real blast flying the Apache a couple of times, so much more than ever before. But okay, let's check out another interesting use case. Okay, here we are in a MiG-15, and my stick is limp, because this is not as manly as an Apache. And note that I'm now using my own profile for this, so only the shake effects are coming from the simulator. And I'm using like a speed dependent force on the stick and now on my pedals. And because the speed is now 0, the force is also 0. And the reason I'm using my own stuff instead of the simulator stuff is because, well, I'm not completely sure about MiG-15. I suspect it's the same as the others, and the problem is that they saturate at a very low speed. Because unless you have this kind of power, you have to have some kind of solid control even at relatively low speeds, which means that the ramp up has to be pretty high early on. And then you just don't have that much power reserve to keep adding and adding and adding and adding up that stuff when you approach like transonic region. Now the scale in the software only goes up to 1,000 kilometers per hour, but it's pretty good for this plane, so let's take a look at these. Now I also tried to have a drooping elevator, but it caused some kind of weird oscillating behavior also at higher velocities, so I'm not using it right now. So there's not much going on right now, but you can see that there's already some centering happening. I can feel that something's happening here. Now I have centering.
1.07. Минводы. Разрешаю руление на полосу 3.0. 1.07. Взлет запрещаю. 1.07. Минводы. Взлет по готовности. Отход по схеме на 300. По давлению 729,49.
Okay, quiet dude. I'm not interested in ATC anyway. Okay, so now I have pretty solid control. We are at about 450 and accelerating. This is not very heavy. This is kind of... It feels a lot like what the Rhino does usually. But we are about to go much higher than that force. Now we're accelerating, and this is piling on the power. And at this point I suspect any like in-game forces would already have saturated. But as we accelerate and accelerate, it's getting harder and harder to feel the stick. Well, actually easier to feel it, but harder to move. And remember, I have the plastic adapter, so I'm being pretty careful here. Okay, so this is already pretty hard here. And it's not very comfortable with the technique I'm using right now. But it feels like the plane is talking to me. Up to much higher velocities than any regular stick or even the Rhino. And of course now I know the speed is slowing down. I can feel it, I don't have to look at the speedometer. And I'm about to get the stick shaker effect also, I think. It's kind of nice that you can separate only the stick shaker effect from the simulator. There you go. So all the spring force is coming from my own profile and the stick shaker is coming from the game. And this is something you can't get from a lesser powerful device. They simply cap out at much lower velocities if you want any control at lower speeds. And I suppose this is what you were expecting from this video, and you are getting it. Also, if you were expecting super junky quality, you are also getting that too, so congratulations. And I have to be a little bit careful here, because this is now the full MiG-15 experience. There's like zero aileron authority right now. And it's not that hard to fly this thing into the ground. And now you have to ask yourself, do you actually want that? Because it's not really an advantage in an online dogfight if you can't move your stick. So for me the question is, yes, I do want it, I like it a lot. I want to feel exactly that, like I said, the real MiG-15 experience. I've of course only read about that stuff, but hey, you can't have it all. And the only thing that can deliver that is this thing here right now. So, okay, about the comparison between this and the Rhino. In the most important category they are now dead even. They have both destroyed one of these adapters. So what I was doing, just like with the Rhino, I flipped this ass backwards, so that the big motor thing that protrudes from the base is forward, so I don't have to cut into my pit to fit it. So when I did that, I also flipped both the axes, Now you know the question. Did you also remember to switch the force direction? Who do you think I am? Of course I did. But did you reverse both the axes? Who do you think I am? Of course I didn't. Thwack! Crash! And a smashed adapter. I wasn't even using a lot of force. I was doing some testing with very small forces and still the adapter just exploded. Thankfully it broke in a different way than when I last broke one with the Rhino, and now I have one functional one from 2 dead ones, so I can still use it. And I should have the metal adapter really soon and I can start properly testing this. So there you go. I think this is the basic difference between a stick that has immense power and a stick that has normal amounts of power. And I'm not going very deep into the comparison because I don't have that much experience on this. Of course I know the Rhino inside out. I've had it for 3 years and it's been absolutely awesome. But the thing is, the first contact on this is really positive for me. I'm actually kind of surprised just how much I like all this force. Now the question out there is obviously how much force can it actually handle, and I don't know. This is pretty much the rated power, which is 45 Newton meters or like 9 buffalo balls per 1/90th of a whale dick. I don't know, something like that. But the problem with testing the force on this one is that the Rhino protects you. So it absolutely looks after you even when things go as rough as they can go. And this is really heavy ailerons already at about 800, that's weird. So the Rhino looks after you, but this thing will absolutely let you break everything inside if you go too hard. Now, if you overheat or overdraw current on the power source, which is like over there somewhere, there's also the big red button on the power source. I believe that will take care of itself. It won't let you kill the power source. What it will do is shut down the entire device and reboot it. And that means that your flying is over. You probably have to restart DCS, I'm not sure, but I'm expecting that you do. And you just lost the fight. Whereas the Rhino simply reduces the forces until it can retain the equilibrium and everything is okay. This thing will go offline and kill you. And that's the best case scenario. Also remember, I haven't tested this, so I might be talking out of my ass, but that's how I think it is. And yeah, that was the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, you blow the motors. Now, nominally these are like 350 watts of power each. And that's an enormous amount of power and heat. They are huge metal blobs, but there's limit to everything, so you can probably overheat the motors too. And when you're yanking on the stick, there's a braking resistor that will like ground much of the power that you are producing with your own human muscles, if you have muscles like me, and that's not a little. That has to go somewhere. Or potentially you can even probably burn the board. I suppose that's a possibility. But like I said, when testing this device, it's kind of unnerving that the best case scenario is a full reboot. And I know that some people have burnt their motors and probably boards too. But I have to remind you again, this is not the beast, this is one beast, and everyone has basically a different beast. Well, not everyone, but you get the point. So I don't know about those people who post about burning motor coils, what kind of motors they had, what kind of setup, what did they do with it. But I'm going to run some tests on what this can do in practice. But one of the things I've noticed is that the Rhino does all kinds of really neat things, like it can limit the amount of current draw from the power source in software. So it's not going to, or it shouldn't shut down the power source once you've set it correctly. I'm pretty sure this one doesn't have similar protections. And it's kind of weird how the Rhino is so much less strong and so much less power, and it has all the protections, and this super powerful device doesn't have any that I know of, besides the power source protection. But yeah, I will be doing some testing. I don't know what kind of values I will be testing. But again, with the plastic adapter in place, I won't do any testing really. So we'll have to wait for the metal one. But as a last point, this all sounds like super positive and like the beast trashing Rhino, which is actually not the case. There is something to be said about the incredible feel of the Rhino, because now mind you, this is a very powerful version of the beast. It's 45 Newton meters, and my stick is basically straight in the gimbal, as short extension as possible. So this is the maximum power case, and this setup will amplify everything that happens in the gimbals and in the motors, including the feel of cogging. And all in all, I'm pretty impressed with how this feels. Like, pretty impressed doesn't actually cover it, it's amazing. But when you compare it with the Rhino, and this is a question many people have had, is there cogging? And with the Rhino, no matter how hard I try, I can't find any. It's like magically smooth. But in here, I can. Like, I think the creator of the FFBeast project said, and don't quote me on this thing, I might remember completely wrong, but he was talking about 10 grams of cogging. But of course 10 grams, I don't know if he specified the situation or what kind of, where he measured it or so on, but I think it's more than 10 grams. And don't get mixed with the stick shaker, that's not cogging. But I can definitely feel it, and when there's little forces applied, it's somewhat pronounced and easy to find. There's like a wavy motion or wavy response from the stick. But just like Propeller said in that forum post, when the forces take over, the cogging just kind of gets drowned out. And this is the MIG experience right here. Yeah, basically, so what he said was also true. When you apply force, the cogging is almost completely or completely drowned out by the resistance. So when the stick gets heavy, you don't feel anything really, or anything extra. But when the forces are lighter, you can definitely find that feel of cogging in this one. Now, does it bother me a lot? No, not really, especially when I'm the kind of guy who wants a lot of damping, and that already does a lot. And I like a lot of force, so that's another thing that will drown out the cogging. But when there isn't much force and you go look for it, you can absolutely find it. And it's up to a point where it can potentially make a difference when you are trying to make like really sensitive close motions. So there is one thing. So basically, and remember this is just my initial impressions on this, the story seems to be that the power matters, and this is like an absolutely incredible device in so many different ways. But if you are the kind of person who doesn't run the Rhino at full power, then you're probably better off with that device. There is so much finesse in the feel and the software also, like different protections and so on. And I'm going to go through the software later on. Both of these and the Rhino have really interesting stuff in the software. I will showcase that later. But so far my initial impression is that yes, the power matters and I love it. And this is super precise and accurate device, and so far it feels pretty amazing. But in the regime where the Rhino works, like a couple of kilos of power and so on, it's probably the better choice. So it's kind of looking like a finesse against power kind of a competition here. Now I don't really know yet which side I'm on, but after having tried all this power, I really like it. I mean really. It's like another step in my quest for the actual flying experience. And it's a pretty big step, to be honest. Like I said, it's not just in a situation like this where you would expect to feel a lot of power. It's also all the other situations where you're just basically doing nothing, and it's like super solid centering, super solid trimming, and even the small movements that you make feel so solid and nice because you are actually applying a reasonable amount of power already very early on. So those important small motions in the middle sector, they kind of feel nice and it become easier. But still, like I said, the incredible, like absolutely magical smoothness of the Rhino still means something, and it actually means quite a lot. So if you are a power kind of a guy, yeah, this might be for you. But if you're not, if you're happy with a couple of kilos instead of 15 kilos or something like that, then at least compared to this, the Rhino has a lot going for it in that region. But anyway, I want to repeat, this is just my initial impression on this. I don't know if I have all the correct settings. Now the Beast has some settings, but not incredible amount, and most of those I haven't touched, so they are probably correct because I didn't do anything to them. Okay, but here's the thing. It'll probably take a while before I actually have any kind of real opinion, so I wanted to have these initial impressions out there. But yeah, I just get lost in the moment here because this is so awesome. I really enjoy this feel. Even now it's just a few kilos extra on top of the Rhino right now. But when I start going, the plane talks to me, like it keeps talking to me all the way to super high speeds. Like for example, right now you are trying to do something really stupid stop. But so, there you go. Another super chunky comparison video, but I think there were some interesting points hidden somewhere in there. If you can find them, you get the Nobel Prize or at least a FIFA prize. So talk to you later, maybe, hopefully.